Good morning, viewer. Welcome to our Fosok TV. Here's the breaking news. Yes, maybe the entire world going towards for the world war. The US Navy reconnaissance ship falls at 21,500 feet over the South China Sea, 30 miles from the contested Parcel Islands, a group of about 130 small atolls, the biggest of which are home to Chinese military bases. A voice saying it's coming from a People's Liberation Army airport crackles over the radio of the US Navy P-8 Poseidon as CNN crew given rare access aboard the US flight lesson saying. American aircraft, Chinese airspace is 12 nautical miles, not approaching anymore, or you bear our responsibility, it says. In a few minutes, a Chinese fighter jet armed with air-to-air missile intercepts the US plane, nestling in just 500 feet of its port side. The Chinese fighter jet was so close, the CNN crew could see the pilots turning their heads to look at them and could make out the red star on the tail fins and the missiles it was armed with. Lieutenant Nicky Slaughter, the pilot of the American plane, calls the twin-engine PLA aircraft. PLA fighter aircraft, this is US Navy P-8A. I have you off my left wing and I intended to proceed to the west. I request that you do the same. Over. There is no reply from the Chinese fighter jet, which escorted the US plane for 15 minutes before turning away. To a CNN crew aboard the American jet, it is stark evidence of the tensions brewing in the South China Sea and between the US and China. The commander of this US Navy mission has a different tack. I had said it's another Friday afternoon in the South China Sea. Navy Commander Mark Hines tells the CNN crew. Over the past several years, the South China Sea has emerged as a major potential flash spot in the Asia-Pacific. Islands in it, like the Paracels near which the US Navy plane was intercepted Friday, are the subject of overlapping territorial claims in part of China, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan. Not only does the strategic waterway hold vast resources of peace, oil and gas, but about a third of global shipping passes through it, worth about 3.4 trillion in 2016 according to the Center of Strategic and International Studies China Power Project. China claims historic jurisdiction over almost the entirety of the vast sea and since 2014 has built up teeny reefs and sandbars into artificial islands heavily fortified with missiles, runways and weapon systems, sparking outcry from the other claimants. The Paracels Islands, called the Zis Island by China, are in the northern part of the South China's east of Da Nang, Vietnam, and south of China's Hainan Island. Named by 16th century Portuguese map makers, they have no indigenous population to speak of. Only Chinese military garrisons amount of 1,400 people according to the CIF fact book. Surrounding them, a 12 nautical miles of airspace that China was claiming as its own Friday, a claim Washington does not recognize. Far to the southeast sides the Spratly Island chains, just 186 miles from the Philippine island of Palawan. In 2016, in case brought by the Philippines, an international tribunal in the Hague ruled that China's claim to historic rights to the bulk of the sea had no legal basis. But Beijing has rejected the tribunal's ruling and continued its military buildup, building bases in the Spratleys, which it calls the Nance Island. China also conducts regular military exercises in much of the South China Sea and maintains a large presence of coast guard and fishing vessels in the disputed waters, which has frequently stoked tensions with its neighbor. On Friday, while flying close to the Philippines, the US Navy P-8 spotted a PLA Navy-guided missile destroyer and descended to around 1,000 feet to get a closer look, bringing more warning from the PLA. US aircraft, US aircraft. This is Chinese naval warship 173. You are approaching to me at low altitude. State your attention and intention over. A voice comes over the US plane's radio. PLA warship 173 is a destroyer Changasa, likely armed with dozens of surface-to-air missiles. The US plane will keep a safe distance. Its pilot, Lieutenant Slaughter, replies, US aircraft. This is Chinese naval warship 173. You are clearly endangering my safety. The Chinese ship says, I am a United States military aircraft. I will maintain a safe distance from your unit. Slaughter replies, and the US mission continues. The US Navy says these missions are routine. US vessels and aircraft operate regularly where international law allows, the Pentagon says, but China claims the US presence in the South China Sea is worth fueling the tension. When a US guided missile cruiser steamed near the Spratly Islands in November, the PLA said such action seriously infringes on China's sovereignty and security and is hard proof that the US is seeking maritime hegemony and militarizing the South China Sea. The US Navy said the US cruiser conducted the operation in accordance with international law and continued on to conduct normal operation in waters where high seas freedoms apply. For Heinz, the US commander, on Friday's mission, the tensions are always less when he is talking with the Chinese side. Silence brings uncertainties, he says. Whenever there is no response, it leaves question, do they understand that what we are saying? Do they understand our intentions? Do they understand we don't mean any harm? He says. For the past Friday, the answer was zero and the encounter were professional, Heinz says, and he wants to keep it that way. Behind the Seaport for Shakti TV.